We continue with our Discernment of Spirits Mondays. And so far we've just been talking about what is discernment of spirits, and we've been saying that it's about perceiving or recognizing or distinguishing different movements of the heart that we're calling spirits. And then after we kind of discern them, recognize them, there's this movement towards accepting movements that are good, that come from God, and then rejecting those that are not good, that they do not come from God. So kind of 3 steps, right? Becoming aware of what's going on in our heart, understanding what's going on in our heart, and then taking action, right? Either accepting or rejecting the movement in our heart. The Discernment of Spirits is based on 14 rules that St. Ignatius wrote. And so we can go ahead and begin kind of exploring the rules. We'll go through each of the 14 rules. And so rule number 1, we're not going to go through the 14 today, okay? But just rule number 1, if we were to put a title on the rule before I read the actual kind of text of the rule, we could give the title of it's about when a person is moving away from God. So this rule kind of talks about what's going on when a person is moving away from God. And so this tells us that there's kind of 2 fundamental directions a person can be going in their spiritual life. They can be moving towards God, or they can be moving away from God, right? A person can just be just in sin and just moving towards more sin, not even trying to follow God. And that's the fundamental direction of this person. Or a person can have many imperfections, sin, but they're trying to fight, right? They're trying to grow closer to God, so they're moving towards God. So there's kind of 2 fundamental directions. And so this first rule is just focusing on what's going on when a person their fundamental direction in life is moving away from God. How does the enemy kind of move in the heart of a person who is fundamentally kind of going away from God? And how does the good spirit, how does God work in a person when they're also going in this direction? So I'm going to go ahead and just read you the rule, and then we'll try to begin to unpack it a little bit today and then in the next few days. So it says, the first rule: in persons who are going from mortal sin to mortal sin, the enemy is ordinarily accustomed to propose apparent pleasures to them, leading them to imagine sensual delights and pleasures in order to hold them more and make them grow in their vices and sins. In these persons, the good spirit uses a contrary method, stinging and biting their consciences through their rational power of moral judgment. So there's a lot there. It's really dense and packed. So, but as we hear at the beginning, right, the first rule, in persons who are going from mortal sin to mortal sin, the enemy, etc., right? So this is focusing on a person who's going from mortal sin to mortal sin. Their fundamental direction of life is away from God. And then it begins to say, what does the enemy do? It says, the enemy is ordinarily accustomed to propose apparent pleasures to them, leading them to imagine sensual delights. And so basically, what St. Ignatius is saying here is that when a person is moving away from God, the way the enemy usually works is that the enemy engages their imagination. For what purpose? To keep them in that fundamental direction away from God. So just to maybe flesh out just an example and to finish with that. So if you think of somebody who's moving just away from God, and let's say one of their main vices is greed. And so what the enemy is going to do is going to engage their imagination to give them more apparent goods of greed, right? So maybe they just got their 3rd house, and so the enemy will present now imagine this even better house, so you can have a 4th house, right? And so engaging the imagination so they can think, I can have this even greater thing, and then I can continue to be drawn to these apparent goods, right? And so the enemy will engage the imagination to draw them further into vice and to sin, right? And another example could be somebody who's very promiscuous, right? And so engaging the imagination of having more, partners and stuff like that, right? Engaging the imagination to try to draw them deeper into that. And so, well, there's more to say about the first rule, but just kind of to summarize what we covered, right? First rule applies to a person who their fundamental direction in life is moving away from God, and the way the enemy acts in such a person in their heart, engaging the imagination to present apparent goods to draw them deeper into that life of